Well, hello everybody. Good evening and welcome to the exciting conclusion of Castle Roogna. Ah! That's right, we've made it here. Starting chapter 11 tonight, adding chapter 12, and wrapping up book 3 of the Xanth series. Would have happened last week, but for those of you guys who are around and follow me at all and have been to any of my other streams are aware that been suffering with kidney stones last week. Yeah, a stream was just not going to happen. Would have loved a stream to happen. There is no chance in the world I could have sat here to be able to read chapters to you guys. Couldn't have done it, unfortunately. But we're going to give it a shot tonight. Done a couple of Stompy Mech streams. Tolerated them decently well. I think we'll be able to make it through and finish our chapters tonight. It's just the 2 chapters left. I think we can do it. Might have to take a little break between chapter 11 and chapter 12, because one of the fun parts of having kidney stones is the need for me to drink plenty of fluids. And with plenty of fluids comes plenty of bio breaks. So we'll get through the chapters, hopefully. Knock on wood. Before I have to go take a bio break. So let's do our little recap of what happened last time. And we're gonna make it short and sweet. Our intrepid heroes made it back to the castle. The zombies did not make it back with them. They were following behind and did not make it to the castle before the siege of the castle started. So Door and Jumper are assisting with the defense of the castle, and the zombie master and Millie were coming up from behind, and, well, they aren't in the castle. Huge battles happening at the castle. Door managed to make nice with the centaurs, and so now the centaurs are on his side. He did that by talking to the, straps of one of the lead centaurs' gear, and finding out that he was impotent. And that was the reason he was so surly. And why was he impotent? Because his filly cast a spell on him. Now that he knows, he is Door's friend. And so, complete swing around, and he's willing to do anything for Door. Yay. They fought off hordes and hordes of goblins coming in to try to get into the castle. And when I say hordes and hordes, basically so many that they came in and they can't swim, but they filled up the moat with dead bodies. They didn't bring siege equipment, so they just ran up against the wall and died. And used those bodies as a stairway, moved up a little bit closer, crushed against the wall, and died. And continued to mound up bodies until they could get to the top of I want to say it was a 30-foot wall. Yeah, that's the way the goblins decided to approach the siege of the castle. And some of the harpies and their minions were fighting up in the air. And now there is a lull in the battle. King Roogna showed up with some magic, helped to dissolve the zombies with some concentrated digestive juices of a dragon. And now that is basically where we come into the start of chapter 11 with the zombies getting ready to show up. The mound of goblins has been obliterated, and we see what's next. So sit back, everybody, relax, and prepare to enjoy the exciting conclusion of Castle Roogna, starting with Chapter 11. Chapter 11, Disaster. "Zombies ahoy!" a centaur cried, pointing east. There they were, at last, the zombies standing at the edge of the forest, beyond the milling goblins. The dragon's stomach smoke had obliterated the monstrous mound of goblins at the north wall, but that effect was abating now, and they were surging back from the east and west wings. Either the newly encroaching goblins would be dissolved also, in which case the region wasn't safe for zombies either, or they wouldn't, in which case the zombies couldn't pass there. So how could the zombie master get through? The zombie master must get to the castle, where he can set up his magical laboratory and work undistracted, Dor said. Now that we have him in sight, there just has to be a way. Yes, I believe at this stage it would tip the balance, King Roogna agreed. But the problem of transport still seems unsuperable. It is difficult enough keeping the monsters outside the castle. Anything beyond the ramparts becomes prohibitive. If we believe that, so must they, Dor said. Maybe we could surprise them. Cedric, would you join me in a dangerous mission? Yes, the centaur said immediately. The king glanced at him, mildly surprised at the change in attitude. Evidently, Dor had done better with the centaurs than Roogna had expected. I want to take the king's flute and lure away the creatures from the vicinity of the zombies, to some place where we can safely detonate the forget spell. That will stop the goblins from coming back here in time to interfere with the zombie master. Could you hold the magic hoop in such a way as to make any airborne attackers pass through it, well outrunning groundborne attacks? I am a centaur, Cedric said. Answer enough. Now really, the king said, this is a highly risky venture. So is doing nothing, Dor said. The goblins are still mounting up at the other walls. Before the day is out, they will be coming over the top, and you have no more dragon juice to melt them down. We've got to have the zombies. Magician Murphy had come up again. You are courting disaster, he said. I respect your courage, Dor, but I must urge you not to go out so foolishly into the goblin horde. Listen, Snotwing, Cedric started. Dor cut him off. If you really cared, magician, you would abate the curse. Is your real objection that you fear this ploy can succeed? The enemy magician was silent. You will need someone to lead the zombies in, Vadney said. Well, I thought maybe Jumper. The big spider? You'd better have him with you, protecting your flank, she said. I will guide the zombies in. That is very generous of you, Dor said, gratified. You can transform any creature that gets through the zombie lines. The zombie master himself is the one who must be protected. Get as close to him as you can, and I shall. Let's get this mission going before it is too late. The king and magician Murphy both shook their heads with resignation, seemingly strangely similar. But Roogna fetched the flute and the forget spell. They organized at the main gate. Dor mounted Cedric, Jumper joined him and bound him securely in place with silk, and Vadney mounted another centaur. The remaining centaurs of the north wall disposed themselves along the east wall, bows ready. Then the small party charged out into the melee of goblins and harpies. There was a withering fire from the wall as the centaurs shot fire arrows, and the goblins, trolls, gnomes, and ghouls withered. It cleared a temporary path through the thickest throng. Cherry bombs and pineapples were still bombarding the allied army. This didn't seem to faze the goblins or their cohorts, but it made Dor extremely nervous. Suppose a pineapple were to land in his vicinity. He would be smithereened. And considering Murphy's curse. Change course! He screamed. Startled, Cedric jounced to the side, through a contingent of elves. There was an explosion ahead of them. Shrapnel whizzed by Dor's nose, and the concussion hurt his ears. 11 bodies sailed outward. Cedric veered to avoid the heavily smoking crater. Hey, a centaur bellowed from the wall. Stay on course! I almost catapulted a pineapple on you! Cedric got back on course with alacrity. Centaurs have sharp eyes and quick reflexes, he remarked. Otherwise, something could have gone wrong. Murphy's curse had tried, though, almost causing Dor to interfere with the centaur's careful marksmanship. Dor realized that he would do best to stick to his own department. He put the flute to his ears, thankful that Jumper was there to help him, so that he had his hands and attention free. He blew experimentally into the mouthpiece. The flute played an eerie, lilting, enticing melody, which floated out through the clamor of battle and brought a sudden hush. Then dwarves and gremlins, vampires and harpies, and numberless goblins swarmed after the centaurs, compelled alike by that magic music. The winged monsters closed in faster, diving in toward Dor. Cedric twisted his human torso in that supple way centaurs had, facing back while still galloping forward. He swung the hoop through the air in an arc, intercepting the dirty birds as they came, and as each passed through the hoop, she vanished. Dor wondered where they went, but he was too busy playing the flute, if his labored blowing could be called playing, and keeping his body low so as not to get snagged by the hoop himself. He could not keep his attention on all the details. With 2 of his legs, Jumper held a spear with which he prodded any goblins or similar ilk that got too close. No ilk could match the galloping pace of the centaur, but since they were forging through the whole goblin allied army, many closed in from the sides. Dor saw Vadney converting those goblins that she touched to pancake discs, and her centaur was fending off the aerial creatures with his fists. Quickly, they reached the zombie contingent. "Follow the woman in!" Dor cried. "I'll lead the monsters away. Block off your ears until I'm beyond your hearing." Yes, that would be a fine Murphy foul-up, to lure the goblins away only to lure the zombie master and Millie into the same forget spell trap. But a problem anticipated was a problem largely prevented. Then he was off, playing the magic flute again. No matter how grossly he puffed into it, the music emerged clear and sweet and haunting, and the creatures followed. "Where to?" Cedric inquired as they galloped. Dor had an inspiration. "To the gap!" he cried. "North!" The centaur put on some speed. The air whistled by them. Experimentally, Dor held the flute into the wind, and sure enough, it played. That saved him some breath. The goblins fell behind, and the elves and dwarves, but the trolls were keeping up. Cedric accelerated again, and now even the vampires lost headway. But Dor kept playing, and the creatures kept following, as they had to. At centaur speed, the gap was not long in drawing nigh. They had to wait for the land and air hordes to catch up. "Now, I want to get them close to the brink, then detonate the forget spell," Dor said, dropping the flute to his side for the moment. "With luck, the harpies will fly on across the gap and get lost, and the goblins will be unable to follow them, so won't be able to fight anymore." "Commemorable compassion," Jumper chittered. "But in order to gather a large number here, to obtain maximum effect from the spell, you must remain to play the flute for some time. How will we escape?" "Oops, I hadn't thought of that. We're trapped by the gap." Dor looked down into the awesome reaches of the chasm and felt height-sick. When would he stop being a careless child? Or was it Murphy's curse catching them after all? Dor would have to sacrifice himself to make the goblins and harpies forget. "I can solve it," Jumper chittered. "Ballooning over the—" "No!" Dor cried. "There is a whole hideous host of things that can and will go wrong with that. Last time we tried it—" "Then I can drop us down over the edge, into the chasm, where the goblins cannot follow," Jumper suggested. "We can use the magic ring to protect us from descending harpies." Dor didn't like the notion of descending into the gap either, but the harpies and goblins and ilk were arriving in vast numbers, casting about for the missing flute music, and he had to make a quick decision. "All right, Cedric, you gallop out of here. You're too heavy to lower on spider silk." "That's for sure," Cedric said. "But where should I go? I don't think I can make it back to the castle. There are 1 or 2 zillion minor monsters charging from there to here, and I'd have to buck the whole tide." "Go to Celeste," Dor suggested. "Your job is honorably finished here, and she'll be glad to see you." "First, to the warlock," Cedric exclaimed, grinning. He made a hand of salute, then galloped off west. Jumper reattached the dragline to Dor, then scrambled over the cliff edge. This easy walking on a near vertical face still amazed Dor. However, it was decidedly handy at the moment. Dor resumed playing the flute, for the goblins were beginning to lose interest. That brought them forward with a rush. They closed on him so rapidly that they wedged against each other, blocking themselves off from him. But they were struggling so hard that Dor knew that jam would break at any moment. Yet he kept playing, waiting for Jumper's signal of readiness. Finally, his nerve broke. "Are you ready?" he called, and the goblins, loosed momentarily from their relentless press forward, eased up. And the jam did break. Dor fumbled for his sword, knowing he could never fight off this inimical mess. But what was he thinking of? It was a magic ring he should use. Cedric had left it with him. He picked it up and held it before him. The first goblin dived right at him. Dor almost dropped the hoop, fearing the creature would smash into him. But as it passed through the ring, it vanished, right before his face, as if it had struck an invisible wall and been shunted aside. Potent magic. "Ready!" Jumper chittered from below. Just in time, for 3 more goblins were charging, and Dor wasn't certain he could get them all neatly through the hoop. More likely they would snag on the rim, and their weight would have carried him back over the cliff. "Jump!" Dor trusted his friend. He jumped, backward off the cliff. He sailed out into the abyss, escaping the grasp of the surging goblins, swinging down and sideways, for Jumper had providentially rigged the line so that Dor would not whomp directly into the wall. The spider always thought of these things before Dor did, anticipating what could go wrong and abating it first. Thus, Murphy's curse had little power over him. That was why Jumper had taken so much time just now, despite knowing that Dor was in a desperate strait at the brink of the canyon. He had been making sure that no mistake of his would betray Dor. And there it was, of course, the answer to the curse: maturity. Only a careless or thoughtless person would be trapped by the curse, giving it the openings to snare him. Now the vampires and harpies swarmed down, though the majority of them were fighting with the goblins above. "Snatch! Snatch!" they screamed. A perfect characterization. Dor found himself swinging back. He held the hoop before him, swinging through the ugly flock. And where the ring passed, no harpies remained, but they clutched at him from the sides. Then Jumper hauled him in against the wall, so that he could set his back to its protective solidity and hold the hoop before him. Dor saw now that the brink of the chasm was not even. The spider had skillfully utilized projections to anchor the framework of lines, so that Dor had room to swing clear of the wall. A remarkable feat of engineering that no other type of creature could have accomplished in so brief a time. "Give me the ring," Jumper chittered. "You play the flute." Right. They had to call as many creatures to this spot as possible. Dor yielded the hoop and put the flute to his lips. Jumper maneuvered deftly, using the hoop to protect them both. Now the harpies dived with single-minded intent, compelled by the music. They swooped through the hoop. They splattered into the wall around it, knocking themselves out and falling twistily down into the chasm, dirty feathers flying free. The vampires were no better off. Then the goblins and trolls started dropping down from the ledge above, also summoned by the flute. Dor broke off. "We're slaughtering them. That wasn't my intent. It's time to set off the forget spell." "We would be trapped by it too," Jumper reminded him. "Speak to it." "Speak to it? Oh." Dor held out the glassy ball. "Spell. How are you detonated?" "I detonate when a voice commands me to," the ball replied. "Any voice?" "That's what I said." Dor had his answer. He set the sphere in a niche in the cliff. "Count to 1,000, then order yourself to detonate," he told it. "Say, that's clever," the spell said. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. "Slowly," Dor said sharply. 1 number per second. "Aww." But the spell resumed more slowly. 7, 8. What a spoil sport you are. 9, 10. A big fat hen. "What?" a nearby harpy screeched, taking it personally. She dived in, but Jumper snagged her with a hoop. Another potential foul-up diffused. "And don't say anything to insult the harpies," Door told the spell. "Aw, shucks. 11, 12. Jumper scurried away to the side, fastened to the other end of a new line he had attached to Door, and hauled him across. This was not as fast as running on level land, but it was expedient. They moved steadily westward, away from the spell sphere. Door continued playing the flute intermittently to keep the goblins massed at the brink without allowing too many to fall over. He heard the spell's counting fading in the distance, and that lent urgency to his escape. The problem was now one of management. He and Jumper had to get far enough away to be out of the forget range, without luring the goblins and harpies beyond range too. Inevitably, a good many monsters would escape, but maybe the ones phased by the forget detonation would lend sufficient confusion to the array to inhibit the ones from returning to the castle. There seemed to be no clear-cut strategy. He just had to fudge through as best he could, hoping he could profit enough to give Castle Roogna the edge. It had worked well with the mundane siege of the Zombie Master's castle, after all. How much nicer if there was simple answers to all life's problems. But the closer Door approached adulthood, the less satisfying such answers became. Life itself was complex. Therefore, life's answers were complex. But it took a mature mind to appreciate the convolutions of that complexity. 105, 106, pick up 100 sticks, the spell was chanting. 107, 108, lay all 100 straight. Now there was a simple mind. Door wondered again how wide a radius the detonation would have. Would the chasm channel it? Then the brunt would come along here, instead of out where the goblins were. Maybe he and Jumper should climb over the rim before the spell went off, and lie low there, hoping to be shielded from the direct effect. But they couldn't come up too close to the goblins, who were milling about near the brink. The harpies were still dive-bombing him, forcing Jumper to jump back with the hoop. Fortunately, the bulk of their attention was taken by the goblins, their primary enemy. Door and Jumper were merely incidental targets, attacked because they were there. Except when Door played the flute, as he continued to do intermittently. 347, 348, now don't be late, the spell was saying in the fading distance. As long as he could hear it, he had to assume he was within its forget radius. Can we go faster? Door asked nervously. He had thought they were traveling well, but the numbers had jumped with seeming suddenness from the neighborhood of 100 to the neighborhood of 300. Unless the spell was cheating, skipping numbers. No, the inanimate did not have the wit to cheat. Door had just been preoccupied with his own efforts and gloomy thoughts. Not safely, friend, Jumper chittered. Let me take back the hoop, Door suggested the spider. Then you can string your lines faster. Jumper agreed and passed back the hoop. Another harpy made a screaming dive. Door scooped her into the hoop, and she was gone without recall or recoil. What happened to the creatures who passed through it? Harpies could fly. Goblins could climb. Why couldn't either get out? Was it an inferno on the other side, killing them instantly? He didn't like that. Jumper was ahead, setting the anchor for the next swing. Door had a private moment. He poked a finger into the center of the hoop, from the far side, watching it disappear from his side. He saw his finger in cross-section, as if severed with a sharp sword. The skin, the little blood vessels, the tendons, the bone. but there was no pain. His finger felt cool, not cold. No inferno there. No freezing weather either. He withdrew it and found it whole, to his relief. He poked it from the near side and got the same effect, except that this time he could not see the cross-section. It seemed that either side of the ring led to wherever it led. A different world? Jumper tugged, and doors swung across, feeling guilty for his surreptitious experimentation. He could have lost a finger that way. Well, maybe not. He'd seen the king's fingers disappear and reappear unharmed. "Let's check and see if the goblins are clear," Dor said. He'd not played the flute for a while. The spider scurried up the wall to peek over with 2 or 3 eyes, keeping the rest of his body low. "They are there in masses," he chittered. "I believe they are pacing the harpies, who are pacing us." "Oh no! Murphy strikes again. We can't get clear of the gap if they follow us." "We should be clear of the forget radius now," Jumper chittered consolingly. "Then so are the goblins and harpies. That's no good." Dor heard himself getting hysterical. "Our effort should have distracted a good number of the warring creatures," Jumper pointed out reasonably. "Our purpose was to distract them so that the zombie master could penetrate to Castle Roogna. If he succeeded, we have succeeded." "I suppose so," Dor agreed, calming. "So it doesn't really matter if the harpies and goblins don't get forget spelled. Still, how are we ever going to get out of here? It is too late to turn off the spell." "Perseverance should pay. If we continue until night—" Jumper cocked his body, lifting his 2 front legs so as to hear better. "What is that?" Dor tried to fathom what direction the spider was orienting and could not. Damn those ubiquitous eyes. "What's what?" Then he heard it. 983, 984, close to the 100th door, 985. A harpy was carrying the spell toward them, and it was about to detonate. "Oh, Murphy!" Dor wailed. "You really nabbed us now." "What's the big secret about this talking ball?" the harpy screeched. 992. Buckle the bag's shoe, the spell said. "Stop counting!" Dor yelled at the spell. "Countdown can't be stopped once initiated," the spell replied smugly. "Quick," Jumper chittered. "I will fasten the dragline so we can return. We must escape through the magic hoop." "Oh no!" Dor cried. "It should be safe. I saw you testing it." 997, 998. The spell continued inexorably. "Now don't be late." Jumper scrambled through the hoop. Dor hesitated, appalled. Could they return? But if he remained here... 1,000. The spell cried gleefully. "Now, at last I can say it." Dor dived through the hoop. The last thing he heard was "Detta." He arrived in darkness. It was pleasant, neutral. His body seemed to be suspended without feeling. There was a timelessness about him, a perpetual security. All he had to do was sleep. "You are not like the others," a thought said at him. "Of course not," Dor thought back. Whatever he was suspended in did not permit physical talking, because there was no motion, I am from another time. So is my friend Jumper the spider. Who are you? I am the brain coral, keeper of the source of magic. The brain coral? I know you. You're supposed to be animating my body. When? 800 years from now? Don't you remember? I am not in a position to know about that, being as yet a creature of my own time. Well, in my time, it gets complicated. But I think Jumper and I had better get out of here as soon as the forget spell dissipates. You detonated a forget spell. Yes, a major one, inside the gap. To make the goblins and harpies and cohorts and ilk stop fighting, they... Forget spells are permanent until counterspelled. I suppose so for the ones affected, but... You have just rendered the gap itself forgotten. The gap? But it's not alive. The spell only affects living things, things that remember. Therefore, all living things will forget the gap. Stunned, Dor realized it was true. He had caused the gap to be forgotten by all those people whose forgetting would be paradoxical, such as those living adjacent to it, who would otherwise fall in and die. Their deaths would be inexplicable to their friends and relatives, leading to endless complications that would quickly neutralize the spell. Paradox was a powerful natural counterspell, but any people who had no immediate need to know would simply not remember the gap. This was true in his own day, and now he knew how it had come about. He had done it with his bumbling. Yet if what he did here had no permanence, how could... He couldn't take time to ponder that now. We have to get back to Castle Roogna, or at least we can't stay here. There would be paradox when we caught up to it in our own time. So it would seem. I shall release you from my preservative fluid. The primary radiation of the spell should not affect you. The secondary may. You will not forget your personal identities and mission, but you may forget the gap once you leave its vicinity. I'm pretty much immune to that anyway, Dor said. I'm one of the near-gap residents, just so long as I don't forget the rest. One question before I release you. Through what aperture have you and all those other creatures entered my realm? I had thought the last large ring was destroyed 50 years ago. Oh, we have a 2-inch ring that we expanded to 2-foot diameter. We can change it back when we're done with it. That would be appreciated. Perhaps we will meet again in 800 years, the coral thought at him. Then Dor popped out of the hoop and dangled by his dragline. Jumper followed. I had not anticipated immobility, the spider chittered ruefully. That's all right. We can't think of everything all the time. Jumper was not affronted. True. The harpies were visible in the distance, but they paid no further attention to Dor and Jumper. They were milling about in air, trying to remember what they were doing there, which was exactly what Dor had wanted to happen. The goblins, however, were in a sadder state. They too seemed to be milling about, but they had forgotten that sharp drop-offs were hazardous to health, and were falling into the chasm at a great rate. Dor's action had decimated the goblin horde. It cannot be helped, Jumper chittered, recognizing his disgust. We cannot anticipate or control all ramifications of any given course. Yeah, I guess, Dor agreed, still bothered by the slaughter he had wrought. Would he get hardened to this sort of carnage as he matured? He hoped not. They climbed to the brim and stood on land again. The goblins ignored them, not remembering them. The frigate detonation had evidently been devastating near its origin, wiping out all memories of everything. Dor spied a glassy fragment lying on the ground. He went to pick it up. It was a shatter from the frigate spell globe. "You really did it, didn't you?" he said to it. "That was some blast," the fragment agreed happily. "Or was it? I forget." Dor dropped it and went on. "I hope Cedric got clear in time. That spell was more powerful than I expected." "He surely did." They hurried back toward the castle, ignoring the wandering hordes. The battle was not over at Castle Roogna, but it was evident that the tide had turned. As the distance from the frigate spell ground zero lengthened, the effects diminished, until here at the castle there was little confusion, except that there were only about a third as many goblins and harpies as before, and the ramparts were manned by zombies. The zombie master had gotten through. The defenders spied them and laid down a barrage of cherry bombs to clear a path to the castle. Even so, it was necessary to employ sword and hoop to get through, for the goblins and harpies resented strangers getting into their battle. So Dor was forced to slay again. War was hell, he thought. King Roogna himself welcomed them at the gates. "Marvelous!" he cried. "You piped half the monsters off the field and made them forget." Vadney led the zombie master in while the goblins were distracted by the flute, and he has been generating new zombies from the battlefield casualties ever since. The only problem is fetching them in. "Then there's work for me to do," Dor said shortly. He found he didn't really want to accept congratulations for doing a job of mass murder. The king, the soul of graciousness, made no objection. "Your dedication does you credit." Jumper helped, of course. Covered by centaur archers on the ramparts, they went out, located the best bodies, looped them with silk, and dashed back under cover. Then they hauled the corpses in on the lines. They were really old hands at this. When they had a dozen or so, they ferried them into the zombie master's laboratory. Millie was there, wan and disheveled, but she looked up with a smile when Dor entered. "Oh, you're safe, Dor. I was worried." "Worried for your fiancé," he said shortly. "He's doing the work." "He certainly is," Vadney said. She was moving the bodies into position for him by converting them to great balls that were easily rolled, then returning them to their regular shapes. As a result, he was evidently manufacturing zombies at triple the rate he had at his own castle. Time was consumed mainly in the processing, not the actual conversion. "He's making an army to defend this castle." "Dor's doing a lot too," Millie said stoutly. Flattered, despite himself, Dor realized that Millie still had feeling for him, and still might. But he had to suppress that. It was not only that his time in this world was limited, and that if he interfered with this particular aspect of history and it stayed put, he would paradoxically negate his whole original mission. It was that Millie was now betrothed to another man, and Dor had no right to do what he wished to do. "We're all doing what we can, for the good of the land of Xanth," he said, somewhat insecurely, considering his own thought. How much better it would be for him if he could find some girl more nearly his own age and status, and "I wish I had full magician caliber talent like yours," Vadney said to the zombie master as she shape-changed another corpse. Dor saw that she was able to handle living things and once-living things and inanimate things like the magic ring. A fair breadth of talent, really. "You do have it," the zombie master said, surprised. No, I am only a neo-sorceress. I would term your topological talent as magician caliber magic, he said, rendering the corpse into a zombie. She almost glowed at the compliment, which carried even more impact because it was evident that he had made it matter-of-factly, unconscious of the effect. She looked at the zombie master with a new appraisal. What potency in a compliment, Dor thought, and filed the information in the back of his mind for future reference. Dor went out to fetch more bodies. Jumper helped, as always. They kept working until daylight waned, and slowly the goblin and harpy forces dwindled while the zombie forces increased. Harpy zombies were now waging the defenses in the air, greatly easing that situation. Yet this left Dor unsatisfied. He had entered the tapestry for one mission, the acquisition of the elixir to restore a zombie to full life. But by the time he had that, he had been enmeshed in another mission, the conversion of the zombie master to King Roogna's cause. Now he had accomplished that also, and was casting about for yet another quest. What was it? He had it now. This foolish war between the goblins and harpies. Was it possible to do something about it, instead of preserving Castle Roogna by wiping out both sides? Why not simply abate the problems that had caused the war? He had gone over this before in his mind and had no answer, but then time had been too much of a factor. Now the castle was prevailing. Now there was time, and he knew more about the magic available. The magic hoop, for example, leading into the brain coral's somber storage lake. "That's it!" he exclaimed. Jumper cocked 4 or 5 eyes at him. "There is something I missed." "Anchor me so I can't fall in. I have to go through the hoop to talk with the brain coral." The spider did not argue or question. He fastened a stout dragline to Dor. Dor propped the magic hoop against a wall and poked his head through. Brain coral, he thought, again finding it impossible to breathe or speak in the preservative fluid. This stuff was not mere water, it had stasis magic. "This is Dor of 800 years from now again." "What is your concern?" the coral inquired patiently. "Have you a male harpy in storage?" "Yes, an immature one, exiled 300 years ago by a rival for the harpy throne." "A royal male?" Dor thought, startled. "By harpy law, a royal person cannot be executed like a commoner. So he was put safely away, and the access ring destroyed thereafter." "Will you release him now? It would make a big difference to our present situation." "I will release him. Bear in mind you owe me a favor." "Yes. I will talk to you again in 800 years. Dor removed his head from the coral's realm. His head had been in stasis, but the rest of his body was responsive. In a moment, a bird shape popped out of the hoop. "Greetings, Prince," Dor said formally. The figure spread his wings, orienting on him. "And what ilk be ye, man thing?" "I am Magician Dor. I have freed you from storage." The harpy glanced an imperial glance at him. "Show your power." Dor picked up a fallen harpy feather. "What is the age of the prince?" he inquired, "exclusive of storage time." "The prince is 12 years old," the feather answered. "Why, that's my age," Dor exclaimed. You'll sure be a giant when you get your full growth," the feather said. The prince cut in. "Very well. I accept your status, and will deal with ye. I am Prince Harold. What is it ye crave of me? You are the only male harpy alive today, Dor said. You must go forth and claim your crown to preserve your species. I charge you with two things only. Do not cohabitate with any but your own kind, and give to me the counterspell to the curse your people put on the goblins. The prince drew himself up with hauteur. One favor ye did me, yet ye presume to impose on me two favors. I need no stricture of cohabitation for when I come of age, not when I have the entire world of harpies to build my harem from. As to this spell, I know not of it. It happened after your exile. You can discover its nature from your subjects. I shall do so, the harpy said. And I discover it, I shall provide the counter as your recompense. Dor conducted the prince to King Roogna, who did a polite double-take as he observed the harpy's gender. Rare magic indeed, he murmured. We must release Prince Harold Harpy to his kind without mishap, Dor told the king. The harpies will have no need to fight once they have him. I see, the king said. He glanced obliquely at Magician Murphy, standing beside him. We shall declare an absolute ceasefire until he is free. I shall walk the ramparts myself to be sure that nothing goes wrong. You may manage to free the harpy, Murphy said grimly, but my curse will have its impact elsewhere. You have not prevailed. But he looked tired. His talent was evidently under severe strain. No single magician, however gifted, could stand forever against the power of three. Dor was almost sorry for him. But we're getting there, Roogna said. He escorted the prince to the wall, cautioning the centaurs not to fire at the harpy. Prince Harold spread his pinions and launched into the sky. There was a screech of sheerest amazement from the nearest female. Then the harpies swarmed to the prince. For an awful moment, Dor feared they had mistaken him and would tear him to pieces. But they had instantly recognized his nature. They lost all interest in the Goblin War. In moments, the entire swarm had flapped away, leaving the goblins nothing to fight against except a few tired vampires. Then, a lone female harpy winged back from the flock. A centaur whistled. Helen! Dor cried. Female harpy winged back from the flock. A centaur. Dor cried, Order of the counter spell. She deposited a pebble in his hand. She winked. Too bad you didn't take your opportunity when you had it, handsome man. You will never have another. I used the ring you gave me to wish for the finest possible match. And now I am to be first concubine to the prince. She tapped her ringed claw. Things evidently happened fast among the harpies. It had only been a few minutes since the prince mounted the sky. Good for you, Dor said. I knew you could do it, the ring replied, thinking Dor had addressed it. I can do anything. She glanced down at it. Oh, so you're talking again. It will be silent hereafter, Dor said. Thank you for the counter spell. It's the least I could do for you, she said, inhaling. The centaurs goggled. Then Heavenly Helen spread her pretty wings and was away, with all males on the parapet staring after her, and even a few of the healthier zombies were admiring her form. There were covert glances at Dor as people wondered what he had done to attract the attention of so remarkable a creature. Dor was satisfied. Helen had, in true Harpy fashion, snatched her opportunity. And who could tell? Maybe the wish ring really had had something to do with it. Dor turned his attention to the pebble spell. "How are you invoked?" he asked it. "I am not invoked. I am revoked," it replied. "I am not a counterspell. I am the original spell. When I am revoked, the enchantment abates." "How are you revoked, then?" "You just heat me to fire temperature, and my magic pours out invisibly until it is all gone." Dor handed the pebble to the king. "That should abate the goblin complaint. With no further reason to fight, the goblins should go home. Then Murphy's curse can't make the battle continue here." "You are a phenomenal magician," King Roogna said. "You have used your mind instead of your body in a truly regal manner." He hurried away with the pebble spell. The king cooked the goblin spell according to the directive, but no change in the goblin horde was apparent. Yet he was not dismayed. "The original spell was subtle," he explained. "It caused the goblin females to be negatively selective. The damage has been done to the goblins over the course of many generations. It will take more generations to reverse. The females are not here on the battlefield, so the males do not even know of the change yet, so we do not see its effect immediately, or benefit from it ourselves. But still, the job is worth doing. We're not trying merely to preserve Castle Roogna. We are building a better land of Xanth." He waved a hand cheerfully. "Evening is among us. We must go to our repast and sleep, while the zombies keep watch. I believe victory is at last coming into sight." It did look that way. Magician Murphy looked glum indeed. Dor, suddenly tired, ate perfunctorily, fell on the bed provided in the completed section of the castle, and slept soundly. In the morning, he woke to discover the zombie master on an adjacent bed and Magician Murphy on another. Everyone was tired, and there was as yet very little space within the castle. The goblins had largely dispersed in the night, leaving their copious dead in the field. The zombies remained on guard. The centaurs had resumed their building labors, no longer needed for the defenses of the castle. Now it did seem likely that Castle Roogna would be completed on schedule. A buffet breakfast was being served in the dining hall, amid the clods of earth, stray pieces of zombies, and discarded weapons. King Roogna was there, and Magician Murphy, and Vadney, and Jumper, and Dor. Murphy had little appetite. He seemed almost as gaunt as the zombie master. "Frankly, I think we have it in hand," the king said. "Will you not relinquish with grace, Murphy?" "There remains yet one aspect of the curse," Murphy said. "Should it fail, then I am done, and will retire. But I must hold on until it manifests." "Fair enough," Roogna said. "I hung on when it seemed your curse had prevailed. Indeed, had not young Dor arrived with his friend." "Surely nothing I did really affected the outcome," Dor said uneasily. For there, ultimately, could be Murphy's victory. "You still feel that what you did is invalid?" the king inquired. "We can readily have the verification of that. I have a magic mirror somewhere." "No, But the king in his gratitude was already on his way to locate the mirror. "Perhaps it is time we verified this," Murphy said.
Your involvement, Dor, has become so pervasive and intricate that it becomes difficult to see how it can be undone. I may have been mistaken in my conjecture. Was my curse opposing you also?
I believe it was, Dor said. Things kept going wrong.
Then you must have validity, or otherwise my curse would not care. In fact, if your efforts lacked validity, my curse might have promoted them, so that they played a larger part in the false success. If the king depended on you instead of on his own.
But how can I change my own? Dor glanced at Vadney, then shrugged. I don't remember whether she knew about him now or not. What did it matter, so long as Millie remained innocent? My own past.
I do not know,
Murphy said.
I had thought there would be paradox, therefore invalid. Yet there are aspects of magic no man can fathom. I may have made a grievous error, and thereby cost myself the victory. Is the gap forgotten in your day?
Yes. They mulled that over for a while, chewing on waffles from the royal waffle tree. Then Murphy said,
It could be that spots of history can be rechanneled, so long as the end result is the same. If King Roogna is fated to win, it may not matter how he does it, or what agencies assist. So your own involvement may be valid, yet changes nothing. You are merely filling a role that some other party filled in your absence.
Could be, Dor agreed. He glanced about. The others seemed interested in the discussion, except for Vadney, who was withdrawn. Something about that bothered him, but he couldn't place it.
At any rate, we shall know soon enough. My power has been stretched to its limit,
Murphy continued.
If I do not achieve the victory this day, I shall be helpless. I do not know exactly what form my curse will take, but it is in operation now, and I think will prove devastating. The issue remains in doubt.
The king returned with his mirror. Let me see. How shall I phrase this? He said to himself. Mirror queries have to rhyme. That was built into them by the magician who made this type of glass. He said it on the floor. Mirror, mirror on the floor, can we trust ourselves to Dor?
Corny,
Murphy muttered. The forepart of a handsome centaur appeared in the mirror. That signifies affirmative, Roogna said. The hind part is the negative. Many centaurs are far handsomer in the hind part, Dor pointed out.
Why not simply ask it which side will prevail?
Murphy suggested wryly. I doubt that will work, the king said, because its answers affect our actions. That would be paradox. And since we have been dealing with very strong magic, it could be beyond the mirror's limited power of resolution.
Oh, let's discover the answer for ourselves,
Murphy said.
We have fought it through this far. We might as well finish it properly.
Agreed, Roogna said. They ate more waffles, pouring on maple syrup from a rare maple tree. Unlike other magic beverage trees, the maple issued its syrup only a drop at a time, and it was dilute, so that a lot of the water had to be boiled off to make it thick enough for use. This made the syrup a special delicacy. In fact, maple trees no longer existed in Xanth in Dor's day. Maybe they had been overlapped, and thus this most magical species had ironically gone the way of most mundane trees. The zombie master came in. Vadney perked up. "Come, sit by me," she invited. But he was not being sociable. "Where's Millie, the maid? My fiancée?" The others exchanged perplexed glances. "I assumed she was with you," Dor said. "No, I worked late last night, and it would not be meet for her for such as she to keep my company unchaperoned. I sent her to bed." "You didn't do that at your own castle," Dor pointed out. "We were not then engaged. After the betrothal, we kept company only in company." Dor thought of asking about the journey from the zombie castle to Castle Roogna, which had at least one night on the road. But he refrained. It seemed the zombie master had conservative notions about propriety and honored them rigidly. "She has not been to breakfast," the king said. "She must be sleeping late." "I called at her door, but she did not answer," the zombie master said. "Maybe she's sick," Dor suggested, and immediately regretted his directness, for the zombie master jumped as if stung. The king interceded smoothly. "Vadney, check Millie's room." The neo-sorceress departed. Soon she was back. "Her room is empty." Now the zombie master was really upset. "What has happened to her?" "Do not be concerned," Vadney said consolingly. "Perhaps she became weary of castle life and returned to her stockade. I will be happy to assist you during her absence." But he would not be consoled. "She is my fiancée. I must find her." "Here, let me query the mirror," the king said. "What's a rhyme for maid?"
Shade,
Murphy said. "Thank you, magician," the king said. He propped the mirror in a niche in the wall where it was in shadow. "Mirror, mirror in the shade, tell us what happened to—" Dor's chair thunked on the floor as he craned forward to see the picture about to form. The mirror slipped from its perch and fell. It cracked in two and was useless. The zombie master stared at it. "Murphy's curse!" he exclaimed. "Why should it prevent us from locating the maid?" He turned angrily on Murphy. Magician Murphy spread his hands.
"I do not know, sir. I assure you, I have no onus against your fiancée. She strikes me as a most appealing young woman."
"She strikes everyone that way," Vadney said. "Her talent is—" "Do not denigrate her to me," the zombie master shouted. "It was only in gratitude to her that I agreed to soil my hands with politics. If anything happens to her—" He broke off, and there was a pregnant silence. Suddenly the nature of the final curse was coming clear to them all. Without Millie, the zombie master had no reason to support the king, and Castle Roogna would then lose its major defensive force. Anything could happen to further interrupt its construction, and would. Murphy would win. Yet the harpies and goblins were gone, Dor thought. Did anything remain that could really threaten the castle? And he realized with horror that one thing did. The zombies themselves. They now controlled Castle Roogna. If they turned against the king, it seems your curse has struck with extreme precision, King Roogna said, evidently recognizing the implication. The issue was indeed in doubt. We must find Millie quickly, and I fear that will not be easy. It was my chair that jolted the mirror, Dor said, stricken. It's my fault.
Do not blame yourself,
Murphy said.
The curse strikes in the readiest manner, such as water seeks the lowest channel. You have simply been used.
Well then, I'll find her, Dor cried. I'm a magician, same as you are. He looked about. Wall, where is she? Don't ask me, the wall said. She hasn't been here in the dining room since last night. Dor marched out into the hall, the others trailing him. Floor, when was she last here? Last night after supper, the floor said. Neither Wall nor Floor elected to be difficult about the details. They knew whom Dor meant, and recognized his mood, and gave him no troubles. Dor traced Millie's whereabouts randomly, pacing the halls. A problem became apparent. Millie, like the others, had moved about considerably during the evening, and the walls, floors, and limited furnishings were not able to distinguish all the comings and goings. It was a trail that crossed and recrossed itself, so that the point of exit could not be determined. Millie had been here at the time the zombie master sent her to bed, and not thereafter. She had not arrived at her own room. Where had she gone? The front gate. See whether she left the castle, the king suggested. Dor doubted Millie would depart like that, not voluntarily. But he queried the front gate. She had not exited there. He checked the ramparts. She had not gone there. In fact, she had gone nowhere. It was as if she had vanished from the middle of the hall. Could somebody have conjured her out? Dor wondered aloud. Conjuring is not a common talent, King Roogna said. I know of no conjurers today who could accomplish this. The magic hoop, Jumper chittered. Oh no. They fetched the hoop, still at its 2-foot diameter. Did Millie the maid pass through you last night? Dor demanded of it. She did not, the hoop said acerbically. No one has been through me since you stuck your fool head through and brought out the harpy prince. When are you going to have me changed back to my normal size? I'm uncomfortable, stretched out like this. Later, Dor told it, experiencing relief. Then his relief reversed. If Millie had gone through there, at least she would be alive and safe and possibly recoverable. As it was, the mystery remained, growing more critical every moment. Query the flute, Jumper suggested. If someone played it and lured her somewhere. Dor queried the Pied Piper flute. It too denied any involvement. Could it be lying? Vadney asked. No, Dor answered shortly. They crossed the castle again, but gained nothing on their original information. Millie had left the zombie master in the evening, going toward her room, and never gotten there. Nothing untoward had been seen by anyone or anything. Then Jumper had another notion. If she is the victim of malodorous entertainment... What? Dor asked. Foul play, the web said, rechecking its translation. Can't expect me to get the idiom right every time. Dor smiled momentarily. Continue. Jumper chittered again. victim of smelly games, then some other person is most likely responsible. We must ascertain the whereabouts of each other living person at the time of her disappearance.
You have an uncommonly apt perception, King Roogna told the spider. You approach things from new directions.
It comes from having eyes in the back of one's head, Jumper said matter-of-factly. They checked for the others. The centaurs had remained on the ramparts, backing up the zombies. Door and Jumper and King Roogna had slept. The zombie master had worked till the wee hours, then gone to the mail room, and thence to his sleeping cot. Magician Murphy had taken an innocent tour of the premises, also stopped at the mail room, and slept. Neo-sorceress Vadney had assisted the zombie master, but gone to the female room shortly before Millie was dismissed. She had returned to work late with the zombie master, then gone to her own room to sleep. Nothing there. What occurs in the female room? Jumper inquired.
Females have functions too, Door said.
Excretion. I comprehend. Did Millie go there?
Often. Young females have great affinity for such places.
Did she emerge on the final occasion?
The men stared. We never checked there, Door cried.
Now, don't you men go snooping into a place like that, Vadney protested. It's indecent.
We will merely ask straightforward questions, the king assured her. No voyeurism.
Vadney looked unsatisfied, but did not protest further. They repaired to the female room, where Door inquired somewhat diffidently of the door.
Did Millie the maid enter here late last night?
She did, but I won't tell you what her business was, the Door replied primly.
Did she depart thereafter?
Come to think of it, she never did, the Door said, surprised. That must have been some business. Door looked up to find one of Jumper's green eyes bearing on him. They had located Millie. Almost. They entered. The female room was clean, with several basins and potties and a big drainage sump for disposal of wastes. In one corner was a dumbwaiter for shipment of laundry and sundry items upstairs. Nothing else.
She's not here, Door said, disappointed. Then this is her point of departure, the king said. Question every artifact here, if you have to, until we discover the exact mode of her demise. I mean, departure, he amended quickly, conscious of the presence of the somber zombie master.
Door questioned. Millie had come in, approached a basin, looked at her pretty but tired face in a mundane mirror, and Vadney had entered the room. Vadney had doused the magic lantern. In the darkness, Millie had screamed with surprise and dismay, and there had been a swish as of hair flinging about, and a tattoo on the floor as of feet kicking. That was all. Vadney had departed the room alone. The light had remained doused until morning, and there was no sign of Millie. Vadney was edging toward the door. Jumper threw a noose and snared her, preventing her escape.
So you were the one!
The zombie master cried. His gaunt face was twisted with incredulous rage, his eyes gleaming whitely from their sockets. I only did it for you, she said, bluffing it out. She didn't love you anyway. She loved Door. And she's just a garden variety maid, not a magician caliber talent. You need a... She is my betrothed, the zombie master cried, his aspect wild. Door echoed the man's passion within himself. The zombie master did love her, as Door did. What did you do with her, you wretch? I put her where you will never find her, Vadney flared. This is murder, King Roogna said grimly. No, it isn't, Vadney cried. I didn't kill her. I just changed her. Dor saw the strategy in that. The zombie master could have reanimated her dead body as a zombie. As it was, he could do nothing. Jumper peered down the drainage sump with his largest eye. Is it possible? He inquired. We'll rip out the whole sump to find her, the king cried. And if you do, Vadney said, what will you do then? Without me, you can't change her back to her stupid sex appeal form. Neo-sorceress, King Roogna said grimly. We are mindful of your considerable assistance in the recent campaign. We do not relish showing you disfavor. Oh, pooh, she said. I only helped you because Murphy wouldn't have me, and I wanted to marry a magician. You have chosen unwisely. If you do not change the maid back, we shall have to execute you. She was taken aback, but remained defiant. Then you'll never get her changed, because talents never repeat. But they do overlap, Roogna said. In the course of decades or centuries, the only way you can save her is to deal on my terms. What are your terms? The king asked, his eyes narrow. Let Dor marry Millie. She likes him better anyway, the stupid slut. I'll take the zombie master. Never! The zombie master cried, his hands clenching. Vadney forced him. Why force marriage on her with a man she doesn't love? She demanded. That shook him. In time she would. How much time? 20 years? When she's no longer so sweet and young? 200? I love you now. The zombie master looked at Dor. His face was tight with emotional pain, but his voice was steady. Sir, there is some truth in what she says. I was always aware that Millie, if you had... He choked off, then forced himself to continue. I would prefer to see Millie married to you than locked in some hideous transformation. If you... Dor realized that Millie was being offered to him again. All he had to do was take her, and she would be restored and Castle Roogna would be safe. He could, by his simple acquiescence, nullify the last desperate aspect of Murphy's curse. He was tempted, but he realized that this transformation was the fate that had awaited her throughout. If he took Millie now, he could offer her nothing. He was soon to return to his own time. Vadney evidently didn't believe that, but it was true. If he eschewed Millie, she would remain enchanted, a ghost for 800 years, a dread but fated destiny. If he interfered now, he really would change history. There was no question of that. This was personal, his immediate knowledge. He would fashion a paradox, the forbidden type of magic, and by the devious logic of the situation, Murphy would win. The curse had at last forced Dor to nullify himself by changing too much. Yet if he turned down Vadney's terms, King Roogna would lose anyway, as the zombie master turned against him. Either way, Magician Murphy prevailed. What was he, Dor, to do? Since either choice meant disaster, he might as well do what he believed to be right, however much it hurt. No, Dor said, knowing he was forcing Millie to undergo the full throes of ghosthood, 8 centuries long. And what reward awaited her there? Nursemaid to a little boy. Association with the zombie. She goes to her betrothed, or to no one. But I am her betrothed, the zombie master cried. I love her, and because I love her, I yield her to you. I would do anything rather than permit her to suffer. True love, King Roogna said. It becomes you, sir. I'm sorry, Dor said. He understood now that his love for Millie was less, because he chose to let her suffer. He was knowingly inflicting terrible grief upon them all. Yet the alternative was the sacrifice of what they had all fought to save. Deviously, but certainly. He had no choice. What's right is right, and what's wrong is wrong. He spread his hands, unable to formulate his thought. The zombie master gazed somberly at him. I believe I understand. Then, surprisingly, he offered his hand. Dor accepted it. Suddenly, he felt like a man. If you will not restore her, the king said angrily to Vadney, you shall be passed through the hoop. You're bluffing, Vadney said. You won't throw away your kingdom just to get at me. But the king was not bluffing. He gave her one more chance, then had the hoop brought. I'll change it back to its original size, she threatened. Then you won't be able to use it. You are very likely to go through it anyway, the king said, and there was something in his expression that cowed her. She stepped through the hoop and was gone. The king turned to the zombie master. It is a matter of principle, he explained. I cannot allow any subject to commit such a crime with impunity. We shall ransack this castle to locate Millie in whatever form she may be, and shall search out every avenue of magic that might restore her. Perhaps periodically we can recall Vadney from storage to see if she is ready to restore the maid. In time. Time, the zombie master repeated brokenly. They all knew the project could take a lifetime. Meanwhile, I apologize to you most abjectly for what has occurred, and will facilitate your return to your castle in whatever manner I can. I hope some year we will meet again in better circumstances. No, we shall not meet again. Dor did not like the sound of that, but kept quiet. I understand, Roogna said. Again, I apologize. I would not have asked you to bring your zombies here had I known what form this curse would take. I am sorry to see them go. They are not going, the zombie master said. Dor felt gathering dread. What was the zombie master about to do in his betrayal and grief? He could destroy everything. There was no way to stop him except by killing him. Dor held his arms rigid, refusing to touch his sword. But nothing holds you here now, King Roogna said. I did not buy Millie with my aid. I did not bargain for her hand. the zombie master cried. I came here because I realized it would please her. I would not wish to displease her even in death by changing that. My zombies will remain here as long as they are needed to see Castle Roogna through this crisis and any others that arise. They are yours for eternity if you want them. Dor's mouth dropped open. Oh, I want them, the king agreed. I will set aside a fine graveyard for them, to rest in comfort between crises. I will name them the honored guardians of Castle Roogna. Yet, enough, the zombie master said, and turned to Dor. But he did not speak. He gave Dor one enigmatic glance, then walked slowly out of the room.
Then I have lost,
Murphy said.
My curse worked, but has been overwhelmed by the zombie master's loyalty. I cannot overcome the zombies.
He too walked away. That left Dor, Jumper, and the king. This is a sad victory, Roogna said. Dor could only agree. We'll stay to help you clean up the premises, Your Majesty. Then Jumper and I must return to our own land. They made their desolate way to the dining room, but no one cared to finish breakfast. They went to work on the cleanup chore, burying unzombied bodies outside, removing refuse from inside, putting away fallen books in the library. The main palace had not yet been built, but the library stood as it would be 800 years hence, apart from details of decor. One large tome had somehow strayed to the dumbwaiter. Dor held the volume for a moment, struck by a nagging emotion, then filed it on the shelf in the library. In the afternoon, they found the zombie master hanging from a rafter. He had committed suicide. Somehow Dor had known, or should have known, that it could come to this. The man's love had been too sudden, his loss too unfair. The zombie master had known Millie would die, known what he would do. This was what he had meant when he told the king they would not meet again. Yet when they cut him down, the most amazing and macabre aspect of this disaster manifested. The zombie master was not precisely dead. He had somehow converted himself into a zombie. The zombie shuffled aimlessly out of the castle and was seen no more. Yet Dor was sure it was suffering, and would suffer eternally, for zombies never died. What awful punishment the zombie master had wreaked upon himself in his bereavement. In a way, it is fitting, King Roogna murmured. He has become one of his own. The lesser personnel of the castle, whom the king had sent away for the crisis, were now returning. The maids and the cooks, the steeds and the dragons. Activity resumed, yet to Dor the hall seemed empty. What a victory they had won! A victory of grief and regret and hopelessness. Finally, Dor and Jumper prepared to depart, knowing the spell that placed them here in the tapestry world would soon bring them home. They wanted to be away from Castle Roogna when it happened. Rule well, King Roogna, Dor said as he shook the monarch's hand for the last time. I shall do my best, Magician Dor, King Roogna replied. I wish you every success and happiness in your own land, and I know that when your time comes to rule. Dor made a deprecating gesture. He had learned a lot here, more than he cared to. He didn't want to think about being king. I have a present for you, Jumper said, presenting the king with a box. It is the puzzle tapestry the zombie master gave to me. I am unable to take it with me. I ask you to assemble it at your leisure and hang it from the wall of whatever room you deem fit. It should provide you with many hours of pleasure.
It shall have a place of honor, always, the king said, accepting it.
Then Dor thought of something.
I too have an important object I can't take with me, but I can recover it after 800 years, if you will be so kind as to spell it into the tapestry. No problem at all, King Roogna said.
Dor gave him the vial of zombie restorative elixir.
I shall cause it to respond to the words, Savior of Xanth.
Thanks, Dor said, embarrassed. He went up to the ramparts to bid farewell to the remaining centaurs. Cedric was not there, of course, having returned home, but Igor Ogre was present, and Dor shook his huge bony hand cautiously. That was it. Dor was no more adept at partings than at greetings. They walked away from the castle, across the deserted, blasted battlefield, and into a vicious patch of sawgrass at the edge. Jumper, more alert than Dor, drew him back from the swipe of the nearest saw just barely in time. They were back in the jungle, the visible, tangible wilderness, where there was little subtlety about evil. Somehow, it seemed like home. Yet, as they sloughed methodically through the forest, avoiding traps, skirting perils, and nullifying hazards in dull, routine fashion, Dor found himself disturbed by more than human-related grief. He mulled it over and finally had it.
It's you, Jumper, he said. We are about to return home, but there I am a boy, and you are a tiny spider. We'll never see each other again, and...
He felt the boyish tears emerging.
Oh, Jumper, you're my best friend. You've been by my side through the greatest and awfulest adventure of my life, and...
I thank you for your concern, the spider chittered, but we need not separate completely. My home is by the tapestry. There are many fat, lazy bugs trying to eat into the fabric, and now I have special reason to keep them from it. Look for me there, and you will surely find me.
But in 3 months I'll only be an older boy, and you'll be dead.
It is my natural span, Jumper assured him. I will live as much in that time as you do in the next 30 years. I will tell my offspring about you. I am thankful that chance has given me this opportunity to learn about your frame of reference. I would never otherwise have realized that the giant species have intelligence and feelings too. It has been a great and satisfying education for me.
And for me, Dor exclaimed.
Then spontaneously he offered his hand. The spider solemnly lifted a forefoot and shook Dor's hand. And that is the end of Chapter 11. I will be back momentarily, and we'll get ourselves into Chapter 12, which is, of course, the final chapter in the book. So, give me a minute or two, quick bio break. I will be right back. Hey Tom, what'd you do? Show up while I was taking a quick bio break? Jeepers. Hello, hello. How are you tonight? Are you showing up? Were you here for chapter 11, or did you show up in time for the very last chapter of Castle Roogna? One chapter left. Chapter 12. We're going to get to it here in a second. It's kind of warm in my. I'm going to open a window. You may notice I took off my sweatshirt as well. It's a little toasty in here tonight for whatever reason. Toasty in my office and it's toasty. Toasty in my office 'cause it's toasty. Well, either way, glad to have you here. Glad for any of you guys that are here. And now, yeah, so I like his Xanth series. It's very punny. But as I'm reading it, it's a little bit deeper in some aspects than I remember it being when I read it as a kid, which naturally are things that happen as you look at books from the perspective of a child versus the perspective of an adult. Um, Needless to say, but yeah, a lot of his stuff, um, you know, he has some punny stuff in here. Like, what was it? He was walking through the sawgrass, and it took a swipe at him with their saw blades. Things like that. Uh, Cherry bombs actually come from cherry trees. Stuff like that he has built into this land, which is kind of fun. Um, First three books, of course, I have by him all up on my YouTube channel if you want to check them out. YouTube.com/at Sir Arminius. Um, these last two chapters will be up, by later tonight. I record them as I read them. He's got some other stuff out there as well. He's got an Apprentice Adept series, which delves into basically a group of like some worlds that were, let's call them, um separated by something where one world is magic and one world is science based. That's his Apprentice Adept series. He's got his Bio of a Space Tyrant series, which is science fictiony and kinda dark. Um, he's got his Incarnations of Immortality series, which I really enjoy that one. Very different. But he's got a wide range across a number of different fantasy and fiction, science fiction type genres. Enjoyable author. Um, you do have to consider sometimes the era in which he wrote some of this. Um, isn't so like these first couple of books in the Xanth series. Um, in this one a little bit more so than maybe some of the others. He's like basically like a barbarian in this one, and a magician, and everybody has a magical talent, and every magical talent is unique. But some of the stuff, and these ones were all written like back in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. At least these first ones. Very different time, obviously, than we're in nowadays, and definitely some of the some of his uh things come off a little bit uh dated from a today perspective. Um he he's you know one of the first characters in here, from the first book, uh is basically a woman who, when she's beautiful, she's dumb. When she's no it and when she's smart, she's ugly. Like notions of the genders and some of that stuff very dated that way. Like an old fashioned sort of male mentality from back kind of then. Um and so not necessarily as up to date as you would want it to be nowadays. But again, you're not going to go back and rewrite the book that was written 45 years ago for today's audience. You just have to accept the way that it was written at the time that it was written, and accept that the book, the way that it was written, would not be written that way today. And knowing that he has probably evolved and changed his opinions and his viewpoints since then. But yeah, exactly that. You've got to let the material stand and recognize that the material was written in a different time. Tom Sawyer, written in a very different time. Some of the stuff written in there, not for today's writing. So, as long as you can take that grain of salt to it, then they're still good books. They can flow fairly well. They're full of adventure and like I said, and magic and things like that. The magicians in here, you've got a magician, magician Roogna, who could basically change things with his magic to um better be adapted to what he needed. There was magician Murphy, who Murphy's Law. That's basically what his thing was. Door can talk to inanimate objects. Um, King Trent from his time can transform living things into other living things. Uh, and then there's everything from people who can put spots on the walls to all sorts of stuff. So it's really kind of neat as you go in through here. So definitely worth a read. They're good books. They're enjoyable, and they can be fairly quick reads if you sit down and read through them. A little bit longer when you read it out loud because, of course, that's the way that it works. But let's go ahead and dive in to the last chapter, everybody. And I hope you enjoy this final chapter of Castle Roogna by Piers Anthony. Chapter 12. Return. One moment Dor was swinging on spider silk across a minor chasm. The next, he was standing on the floor of the Castle Roogna drawing room before the tapestry.
"Is that you, Dor?"
a familiar voice inquired. Dor looked around and spied a tiny humanoid figure. "Of course it's me, Grundy," he told the golem. "Who else would it be?"
"The brain coral, of course. That's who it's been for the past 2 weeks."
Of course. Quickly Dor readjusted. He was no longer a great thewed mundane. He was only a small, spindly 12-year-old boy. His own body. Well, it would grow in due course. He focused on the tapestry, looking for Jumper. The spiders should be where they had been when the spell reverted. in the wilderness. Ah, there was a speck. Dor leaned forward and spied the tiny creature, so small he could crush it with the tip of his tiniest finger. Not that he would ever do such a thing. It raised a hair-like foreleg in a wave.
It seems you look strange in your real form,
Grundy said.
it says.
I need no translation, Dor snapped. Suddenly his eyes were blinded by tears. Whether of joy or grief he was uncertain. I'll see you again, Jumper. Soon. Within a few days, a few months of your time, I mean. Oh, Jumper.
Who cares about a dumb bug?
Grundy asked. Dor clenched his fist, for an instant tempted to smash the golem into the pulp from which he had been derived. But he controlled himself. How could Grundy know what Jumper meant to Dor? Grundy was of the old order, unenlightened. There was nothing Dor could do. The spider had his own life to lead. Dor had his. Their friendship was independent of size or time. But, oh, he felt a choke in his heart. Was this another aspect of becoming a man? Was it worth it? Yet Dor had friends here, too. He must not allow his experience of the tapestry world to alienate him from his own world. He turned away from the tapestry. Hello, Grundy. How are things in the real world?
Don't ask,
The golem exclaimed.
You know the brain coral who took over your body? Thing was like a child. I mean, even childier than you at times. Poking into everything, making faux pas.
What?
Cultural errors, like belching into your soup. That thing really kept me hopping.
Sounds like fun, Dor said, smiling. Already he was getting used to this little body. It lacked the strength of the mundane giant, but it wasn't a bad body. Listen, I have to talk to the coral. I owe it a favor.
No, you don't. You owe it a punch in the mouth, if anything. If it has a mouth. All's even. It got the fun of using your body, while you went into that tapestry land for a nice vacation.
Some vacation.
I owe it from 800 years ago. Oh, well, sure. Tell the gnome.
Who?
Oh, the good magician Humphrey. I will. Right now I have to go see Jonathan the zombie. Oh, yeah? You got the stuff? I got it, I think. This will be something. The first restored zombie to go with the first restored ghost. For centuries, she untouchable and he not worth touching. Grisly romance.
Dor might have snapped something nasty at the golem, but recent experience had lent him discretion, so he changed the subject.
Maybe I'd better check with King Trent. He's the one who put me up to this.
Grundy shrugged.
Just so I don't have to exchange another word with the coral. That's next.
Dor couldn't help teasing the golem a little.
Look, you know what that creature was doing with your body and Irene? Who?
Dor was distracted, thinking about his upcoming interview with the brain coral. What kind of favor would he have to repay after 800 years?
Princess Irene, daughter of the king. Remember her?
Well, it has been 8 centuries in a matter of... Dor did a double take.
What did my body do with Irene? Coral was really curious about the distinction between male and female anatomy. Coral's asexual or bisexual or something, see, and...
Enough. Do you realize I'm about to go see her father?
Why do you think I mentioned the matter? I tried to cover for you, but King Trent's pretty savvy and Irene's a snitch. So I'm not sure. When did my body? Yesterday. Then there may still be time. She doesn't speak to her father for days at a time. In a case like this, she might make an exception. She might indeed, Dor agreed worriedly. What does it matter? The king knows she's a brat. It's my own reputation I'm thinking of. Dor had been accorded the respect due a grown man in the tapestry world, and the feeling was now important to him. But it was more than that. Other people had feelings too. He thought of how Vadney had glowed when the zombie master complimented her talent, and how Murphy's curse had perverted that into her doom and his, and Millie's. Feelings were important, even those of brats. Dor addressed the floor. Where is Irene? Hasn't been here for days. He moved into the hall, questioning as he went. Soon he located her, in her own apartment in the palace. You go elsewhere. Or, you go elsewhere, he told Grundy. I have to handle this myself. Aww, the golem complained. Your fights with Irene are so much fun. But he obediently departed. Dor inhaled deeply, the act reminding him fleetingly of heavenly Helen Harpy, squared his shoulders, then knocked politely. Quickly, she opened the door. Irene was only 11, but with his new perspective, Dor saw that she was an extremely pretty child, about to blossom into a fine young woman. The lines of her face were good, and though she had not yet developed the feminine contours, the framework was present for an excellent enhancement. Give her 2 years, maybe 3, and she might rival Millie the maid, with a different talent, of course. Well, she said, with the sharpness of nervousness. May I come in? You sure did yesterday. Want to play house again? No. Dor entered and closed the door quietly behind him as she retreated. How to proceed? Obviously she had strong reactions and was wary of him without actually being frightened. She had potted plants all around the room, and one was a miniature tangler. She had no need to fear anyone. She hadn't told her father yet. He had, in the course of locating her, determined that she had not been near the library in the past day. Irene was a palace brat whose talent fell well short of magician caliber. No one would ever call her sorceress. She had a sharp tongue and some obnoxious mannerisms. Yet, Dor reminded himself again, she was a person. He had always held her in a certain contempt because her talent was substantially beneath his own. But so was Millie's. Magic was important, certainly, and in some situations critical, but in other situations it hardly mattered. The zombie master had recognized that. Now Dor felt ashamed, not for what his body might have done yesterday, but for what he, Dor, had done a month ago, a year ago. Stepping on the feelings of another person. It did not matter that he had not done it maliciously. As a full magician, in line to inherit the crown of Xanth, he should have recognized the natural resentment and frustration of those who lacked his opportunities. Like Irene, daughter of 2 of the 3 top talents in the older generation, doomed to the status of a non-entity because she had only ordinary magic, and was female. How would he feel in such a circumstance? How had his father Bink felt as a child of no apparent magic? Irene, I guess I've come to apologize. He remembered how freely King Roogna had apologized to the zombie master, though the problem had only deviously been the fault of the king. Royalty had no need to be above humility. I had no right to do what I did, and I'm sorry. It won't happen again. She looked at him quizzically. You're talking about yesterday? I'm talking about my whole life, he flared. I have strong magic, yes, but I was born with it. It's an accident of fate. No personal credit to me. You have magic yourself. Good magic. Better than average. I make dead things talk. You make live things grow. There are situations in which your talent is far more useful than mine. I looked down on you, and that was wrong. I can't blame you for reacting negatively. I would do the same. In fact, you fought back with more spunk than I ever did. You're a person, Irene. A child as I am, but still a human being who deserves respect. Yesterday, he stalled, for he had no clear idea what the coral had done. He should have gotten the specifics from Grundy. He spread his hands. I'm sorry, and I apologize, and... She raised a finger in a little mannerism she had, silencing him. You're taking back yesterday? Dor couldn't help thinking of his own yesterday, piping goblins and harpies after him with the magic flute, swinging on spider silk inside the gap, detonating the forget spell that still polluted the gap, hauling corpses from battlefield to laboratory to make zombies. Unparalleled adventure, now forever past. Yesterday was 800 years ago. I can't take back yesterday. It's part of my life now, but... Listen, you think I'm some naive twit who doesn't know what's what? No, Irene, I was the naive one. You claim I didn't know what I was doing, what you were doing. Dor sighed. How true that statement was. I really can't make excuses. I'll take my medicine. You have a right to be angry. If you want to tell your father... Father hell, she snapped. I'll take care of this myself. I'll give back exactly what you gave me. Dor was not reassured. As you wish. It is your right. Close your eyes and stand still. She was going to hit him. Dor knew it. But it seemed he had it coming. He had let the brain coral use his body. He was responsible. He closed his eyes and stood still, forcing his hands to hang loosely at his sides, undefensively. Maybe this was the best way to settle it. He heard her step close, almost felt the movement of her body. She was raising her arm. He hoped she wouldn't hit him low. Better on the chest or face, though it marked him. It was on the mouth, but strangely soft. In fact, she was kissing him. Totally surprised, Dor found himself putting his arms around her, partly for balance, mostly because that was what one was supposed to do when kissed by a girl. He felt her body yield to him, her hair shifting with the motion. She smelled and tasted and felt pleasant. Then she drew back a little within his embrace and looked at him. What do you think of that? She asked. If you intended that to be punishment, it didn't work, he said. You're sort of nice to kiss. So are you, she said. You surprised me yesterday. I thought you were going to hit me or yank off my panties or something, and I was all set to scream. And it was all awkward and bumpy, noses colliding and stuff. So I practiced last night on my big doll. Was it better this time? A kiss. That was what they had done yesterday? Dor's knees felt weak. Trust Grundy the Golem to blow it up into something gossipy. There's no comparison. Should I take off my clothes now? Dor froze, chagrined. She laughed. I thought that would faze you. If I wouldn't do it yesterday, What makes you think I'd do it today?
Nothing, Dor said, relaxing with a shuddering breath. He had seen naked nymphs galore in the tapestry, but this was real. Nothing at all. Nothing absolutely at all.
You want to know what yesterday was? She demanded. It was the first time you really got interested in me, for anything. The first time anybody got interested in me who didn't want a plant grown fast, instead of calling me a palace brat who should have been a sorceress but could only grow stupid green stuff. Do you have any idea what it's like having two magician-caliber parents and being a big disappointment to them because not only are you a girl, you have lousy talent?
You have good talent, Dor protested. And there's nothing wrong with being a girl.
Oh, sure, she countered. You never had no talent. You never were not male. You never had people being polite to your face because of who your father was and what your mother might do to them. Well, they cut you down behind your back and called you skunk cabbage and garden variety talent and weed girl and...
I never called you that, Dor cried.
Not in so many words, but you thought it, didn't you?
Dor blushed, unable to deny it. I won't think it again, he promised lamely.
And on top of that, she continued grimly, you know your own parents only stand up for you because they have to. But privately, they think just the same as all the other people do.
Not the king, Dor protested. He is not that type.
Shut up,
she flared, her eyes filling with angry tears. Dor did, and she composed herself. Girls of any age were good at quick composures.
So then yesterday you were different. You kept asking questions and you paid real attention. Just as if you didn't have a sex pot like Millie the ghost in your cheesy house to sneak peeks at and get the whole story. And you didn't say a word about magic or make anything talk or anything. It was just you and me. All you wanted to know was what it was like being a girl. It was as if something else were speaking, something awfully smart and ignorant wanting to learn from me. First I thought you were poking fun at me, teasing me, but you never smiled. Then you wanted to kiss me, and I thought, now he's going to bite my lip or pinch me, and all over laughing, but you didn't laugh. So I kissed you, and it was awful. I bruised my nose. What the hell? I thought at least you'd know how, but you didn't, and you just said, "Thank you, princess," and left. And I lay on my bed a long time trying to figure out where the joke was, what you were telling the boys.
I didn't, Dor protested.
I know. I snooped. Some. You didn't say anything, and neither did the golem. So it seemed you really were interested in me, and...
She smiled, and she looked brilliantly sweet when she did that.
And it was the greatest experience of my whole life. You're a real magician, and...
No, that has nothing to do with...
So I practiced kissing, just in case. Then you came in just now, apologizing, as if it were something dirty. So I thought you hadn't meant it, had just been slumming, and...
No, Dor cried in sudden anguish. That wasn't it at all.
I know that now. Can't blame me for wondering, though.
She smiled again.
Listen, Dor. I know tomorrow it'll be just like before, and I'll be a snotty palace brat to you, but... would you kiss me again?
Dor felt deeply complimented. Gladly, Irene. He bent to kiss her again. He was young yet, and so was she. But it was a foretaste of what they might experience when they both grew up.
Maybe again sometime?
She inquired wistfully.
I sort of like being a girl now.
Sometime, he agreed. But we've got to fight some too, or the others will tease us. We're still too young. But not very much too young, he thought. He could see the road ahead rather clearly now, after his tapestry experience.
I know.
They broke, and there seemed to be nothing more to say, so Dor went to the door and opened it. He paused to look back at her, remembering what she had said about her parents being disappointed in her. She was sitting on her bed, bathed in a forlorn joy.
Not the king, he repeated quietly. I believe that.
Irene smiled.
No, not the king.
And not me.
Same thing.
He stepped out and closed the door, knowing he wasn't through with her. Not today, or tomorrow, or for some time to come. Not through at all. Grundy was waiting for him.
Any black eyes? Broken teeth? Throttle marks. It was awful quiet in there.
She's a nice girl, Dor said, walking toward the library.
Funny I never noticed that before.
Brother,
the golem expostulated.
First he notices Millie the ghost, then Irene the brat. What's he coming to?
Maturity, Dor thought. He was growing up, and new horizons were opening, and he was glad. They arrived at the library.
Come in,
King Trent called before Dor could knock. Dor entered and took the seat indicated.
Remember how you sent me on a quest, Your Majesty? I have returned.
The king held up one hand, palm out. Dor thought of Jumper's mode of greeting.
Let me not deceive you, Dor. Humphrey advised me, and I could not resist watching the tapestry. I have a fair notion of what you have been doing.
You mean the tapestry showed me what I was doing while I was doing it?
Certainly. Once I knew which character to watch. You and that spider. You're lucky you didn't kill yourself in the gap. But there was no way for me to revoke the spell before its natural span expired. I sweated to think of what I would have to say to your father if...
Dor laughed convulsively.
And I was worried about Irene's father.
King Trent smiled.
Dor, I really don't like to snoop around the palace, but the Queen does. She quickly noticed the change in you, saw that you never used your talent, and found out about the brain coral. Her picture hangs in Irene's room. The Queen merely substituted her own illusion image for the picture and had what they call in Mundania a ringside seat. She watched everything yesterday, and today, and advised me just now.
Dor shrugged.
I stand by what I did, both days.
I know you do, Dor. You're coming into manhood nicely. Do not assume the Queen is your enemy. She wants her daughter to follow you, and knows what is required, though she may resent it strongly. I am aware how ticklish the situation in the bedroom was. You handled it with the finesse I would expect in a leader.
That wasn't finesse. I meant every word.
Finesse and meaning are not mutually incompatible.
Irene's not bad at all once you get to know her.
Dor stopped, embarrassed.
What am I doing, telling you this? You're her father.
The king clapped a friendly hand on Dor's shoulder.
You have pleased me, magician. Now, through your adventure, I know the secret of the flute and the hoop in the royal arsenal. They would be extremely useful on occasion. I shall not keep you from the completion of your quest. You must wrap it up, for there will be assignments for you in today's world, as you learn to govern Xanth.
He walked to a low bookshelf and brought out a rolled rug.
We saved this for your convenience.
It was a magic carpet.
Thanks, Your Majesty. I do have some traveling to do.
Dor mounted the rug.
Rain coral,
he told it, and it took off. As the carpet ascended the sky and the landscape of modern Xanth opened out like a tapestry, Dor felt abrupt nostalgia for the tapestry world he had left. It was not that that world was superior to his own. Its magic was generally cruder, its politics more violent. It was his experience of manhood and friendship, especially with Jumper. He knew he would never be able to recover the personal magic of that experience. Yet, as his session with Irene had shown, there was unexpected magic in this world, too. All he had to do was appreciate it. Down into the underworld, through the cavern passages. Goblins still reigned here, he knew, though they had almost disappeared on the surface of Xanth. What had happened to them? They had not all been slaughtered at the Battle of Castle Roogna, and the Forget spell would not have wiped them out. Had there been some later goblin calamity? Then he was at the subterranean lake. Modern transport was certainly an improvement over ancient. This had hardly taken any time at all. No goblin calamity, the brain coral thought to him. The harpy curse on the goblin populace was nullified on the surface, but lingered in the depths. Therefore the goblins above became, generation by generation, more intelligent, handsome, and noble, until they no longer recognizable as monsters. The only true goblins today are those of the caverns.
Then I wiped out their species, Dor exclaimed, in a way I never anticipated.
Their species, as you knew it, was a horrendous distortion, a burden to themselves as much as to others. They cared so little for themselves, they were glad to die in a goblin sea tactics when storming a castle. You did well in releasing them from their curse, and in restoring the male of the species to the harpies.
About that, Dor said. You gave up Prince Harold Harpy as a favor to me, and now I have come to return the favor, as I said I would.
No need, magician. When you came 2 weeks ago, I did not make the connection. After all, you wore a different body when I first met you, 800 years ago. But in the past 2 weeks I worked it out. You returned that favor 800 years ago.
No, I came back here to my own time, so...
You brought victory to Castle Roogna. Therefore, his rival magician Murphy retired from politics, preferring to wait until some better situation arose. He came to me.
Murphy was exiled?
Dor asked, startled. It was voluntary. King Roogna would have liked to have his company, but Murphy was restless. He is in my storage now. Perhaps 1 century I will release him, when Xanth has need of his talent. Now, in exchange for the Harpy Prince, I have Murphy and Vadney, who may one day make a fine pair. You owe me nothing.
I guess so, if you see it that way, Dor said. Still...
If ever you choose to travel from your body again, keep me in mind, the coral thought. I learned a great deal about life, though I do not yet properly comprehend the sexual nature of man.
No one does, Dor said, smiling.
I do not experience emotion, but in your body I did. I liked the little princess.
She is likable, Dor agreed. Look, I promised to have your access hoop shrunk back to ring size, but...
Forgiven. Farewell, magician.
Farewell, Coral.
The rug took off and zoomed back through the cavernly passages. When it emerged into the sky, it hesitated, until Dor remembered that he had not told it where to go next.
Good Magician Humphrey's castle.
Dor was reminded again that Humphrey's castle stood where the Zombie Master's castle had once been. The two were of different designs. Probably the site had been razed more than once and rebuilt. Humphrey was, as usual, poring over a massive tome, paying no attention to what went on around him, supposedly.
What, you again?
He demanded irritably.
Listen, gnome,
Grundy began. The good magician smiled. A rare thing for him.
Why listen when I can read? Observe.
And he gestured them to look at the book, over his shoulder.
But I'm not a killer, Dor protested vehemently. I'm only a 12-year-old.
He caught himself, but didn't know how to correct his slip. A 12-year veteran of warfare, she exclaimed. Surely you have killed before. It was grossly misplaced, but her sympathy gratified him strongly. His tired body reacted. His left arm reached out to enclose her hips in its embrace. As she stood beside him, he squeezed her against his side. Oh, her posterior was resilient. Why, Dor, she said, surprised and pleased. You like me. Dor forced himself to drop his arm. What business did he have touching her, especially in the vicinity of her cushiony posterior? More than I can say. I like you too, Dor. She sat down in his lap, her derriere twice as soft and bouncy as before. Again his body reacted, enfolding her in an arm. Dor had never before experienced such sensation. Suddenly he was aware that his body knew what to do, if only he let it. That she was willing, that it would be an experience like none he had imagined in his young life. He was 12. His body was older. It could do it. Oh, Dor, she murmured, bending her head to kiss him on the mouth. Her lips were so sweet. The flea chomped him hard on the left ear. Dor bashed at it and boxed his ear. The pain was brief, but intense. He stood up, dumping Millie roughly to her feet. I have to get some rest, he said. She made no further sound, but only stood there, eyes downcast. He knew he had hurt her terribly. She had committed the cardinal maidenly sin of being forward, and been rebuked. But what could he do? He did not exist in her world. He would soon depart, leaving her alone for 800 years. And when they rejoined, he would be 12 years old again. He had no right. But oh, what might have been, were he more of a man. Dor found himself blushing. You mean that book records everything? Even my private feelings? Yet, obviously it did.
We were not about to let a future king of Xanth go unmonitored,
Humphrey remarked.
Especially when our own history was involved. Not that we could do anything about it once the tapestry spell was cast. Still, as vicarious experience.
Was it valid? Dor asked. I mean, did I really change history?
That is a question that may never be answered to absolute satisfaction. I would say you did, and you did not.
A typically gnomish answer,
Grundy said.
One must consider the framework of Xanth history,
The good magician continued.
a series of waves of mundane conquest, with the population decimated again and again. If every person lived and reproduced without a break, any interruption in that process would eliminate many of today's residents, all of the descendants of that person. But if a subsequent wave wiped them out anyway,
He shrugged.
there would be considerable change, all nullified a generation or two later, in which case there would be no paradox relating to our own time. I would say that the original Castle Roogna engagement was real, and that you changed that reality. You rewrote the script, but you changed only the details of that particular episode, not the overall course of history. Does it matter?
I guess not,
Dor said.
About that page I was reading,
Humphrey said.
it seems you have been concerned about manhood. Did it occur to you that you might be more of a man in the declining of the maid's offer than in the acceptance of it?
No.
There is somewhat more to manhood than sex.
As if on cue, the Gorgon entered the room, in a splendidly sexy dress, but still without a face.
That's male propaganda, she said from the vacuum. There is certainly more to womanhood than sex, but a man is a simpler organism.
Ooh, what you said,
Grundy exclaimed, rubbing his tiny forefingers together in a condemning gesture.
I said organism, she said. You authenticate my case.
Get out of here, both of you,
Humphrey snapped.
The magician and I are trying to hold a meaningful dialogue.
Thought you'd never ask,
Grundy said. He hopped to the Gorgon's shoulder, peering into the nothingness framed by her snake ringlets. A snakelet hissed at him.
Same to you, Slinky.
He snapped at it, and the snake retreated. He peered down into the awesome crevice of her bodice.
Come on, honey, let's go down to the kitchen for a snack.
When they were alone, Humphrey flipped a few pages of the history tome idly.
I was surprised to learn that the Zombie Master's castle was on this very site,
he remarked.
Were he alive today, I would gladly share this castle with him. He was a remarkably fine magician, and a fine man as well.
Yes,
Dor agreed.
he was the real key to King Roogna's success. He deserved so much better than the tragedy he suffered.
He felt another surge of remorse. Humphrey sighed.
What has been, has been.
Have you given the Gorgon your answer yet?
Not yet. Her year is not yet complete.
You are the most mercenary creature I know,
Dor said admiringly.
Every time I think I've seen the ultimate, you come up with a worse wrinkle. Are you going to marry her?
What do you think?
Dor visualized the Gorgon's body with historical perspective.
She's a knockout. She wants you, you're sunk. She doesn't need a face to turn a man to stone, in a manner of speaking.
The good magician nodded.
You have learned a new manner of speaking. The key concept is, she wants. Do you really think she does?
Why else did she come here?
Dor demanded, perplexed.
Her original motive was based largely on ignorance. How do you think she might feel once she knows me well?
Dor searched for something diplomatic to say. The good magician had his points, but was no easy man to approach, or to get along with.
Therefore, the kindest thing to do is give her sufficient opportunity to know me well enough,
the magician concluded. A year, Dor exclaimed. That wait for her answer. Not for you. For her. So she can change her mind if...
Precisely.
Humphrey looked sad.
It has been a most enticing dream, however, even for an old gnome.
Dor nodded, realizing that the good magician had not been proof against the attractions of the Gorgon, any more than the lonely zombie master had been proof against Millie. The two magicians were similar in their fashion, and a similar tragedy loomed.
Now, we must conclude your case,
Humphrey said briskly, refusing to dwell further on the inevitable.
You owe me no further service, of course. The history book has provided it all, and I consider the investment well worthwhile. I have now fathomed many long-standing riddles, such as the origin of the forget spell on the gap, so I may send you on your way. Your account quit.
Thank you, Dor said. I have brought back your magic carpet.
Oh, yes, but I shall not leave you stranded. I believe I have a conjuration spell stashed away somewhere. Have the Gorgon located for you as you leave. It will take you home in a flash.
Thank you. It was a relief not to have to contemplate another trek through the jungle. Now I must go give the restorative elixir to Jonathan. The good magician frowned at him.
You have had an especially difficult decision there, Dor. I believe you acted correctly. When you become king, the discipline of emotion and action you have learned in the course of this quest will serve you in excellent stead. It may be of more asset to you than your magic talent. King Trent's hiatus in Mondania matured him similarly. It seems there are qualities that cannot be inculcated in a secure, familiar environment. You are already more of a man than most people ever get to be.
Thanks, Dor mumbled. He had yet to master the art of graciously receiving compliments, but the magician had already returned to reading his tome. Dor moved toward the door. Just as he left the room, Humphrey remarked without looking up,
You remind me of your father.
Suddenly, Dor felt very good. Grundy and the Gorgon were sharing a Scream soda in the kitchen. Dor heard the noise from several rooms away. They were using straws, hers poked into her nothing face, where the soda disappeared. She had a face, all right. It just could not be seen. Dor wondered what it would be like to kiss her. In the dark, she would seem entirely normal, except for those little snakes. I need the conjuration spell, Dor said. The one that flashes. The screams faded as she left the soda. I know exactly where it is. I have every spell classified and filed properly. First time there's been order in this castle in a century. She reached for an upper shelf, her figure elongating enticingly. What a woman she would be, if only she had a visible face. But no, that would be ruinous. Her face petrified men. Literally. There, she said, bringing down an object that looked like a closed tube. It had a lens on one end and a switch on the other. You just push the switch forward there when you're ready.
I'm ready now. I want to go to the tapestry room in Castle Roogna. Are you coming, Grundy?
One moment.
The golem sucked in the last scream from the soda, no more than a whimper, actually, and crossed the room.
Do you really want to marry the good magician now that you know him?
Dor asked the Gorgon curiously. What would he do for socks and spells without me? She retorted. This castle needs a woman.
Yes. All castles do, but...
What kind of man would give a pretty girl board and room for a year, never touching her, just to think it over, knowing she probably would change her mind in that period?
A good man. A patient one. A serious one.
Then Dor nodded, understanding the thrust of her question.
One worth marrying.
I thought I wanted him when I came here. Now I am sure of it. Under all that grouch is a remarkably fine magician, and a fine man, too. Almost exactly the words Humphrey had used to describe the zombie master. But it seemed that tragedy was about to bypass the gnome after all. Parallels went only so far.
I wish you every happiness.
Would you believe there are 3 happiness spells on that shelf? She winked. And a potency spell, too. But he won't need that, I suspect. Dor eyed her once again with the memory of his erstwhile mundane barbarian body.
Right.
Actually, all he needs for happiness is a good, cheap, historical adventure tome, like the one he's reading now about ancient Xanth. I'm going to read it too as soon as he finishes. I understand it has lots of sex and sorcery and a really stupid barbarian hero. Hastily, Dor pushed the switch. The spell flashed, and he stood before the tapestry.
Savior of Xanth, he said, feeling foolish.
And his vial of restorative elixir popped out from whatever invisible place it had lain for 800 years. He had to catch it before it could shatter on the floor, but he lacked the muscle and reflexes his mundane body had had, and missed. The vial plummeted and jerked short on an invisible thread, and swung there undamaged. A silken dragline had been attached to it.
Not this time, Murphy,
Dor cried as he nabbed it. He looked for his friend Jumper, who had surely rescued him again in this fashion, but did not see him. Now, with the object of his quest in hand, he wondered, how could an object be spelled into a tapestry within a tapestry? How could it emerge from the main tapestry? Or were the 2 tapestries the same? They had to be because... Yet they couldn't be because... He seemed to be skirting paradox here, but couldn't quite grasp it. Anyway, he had the elixir. Best not to question too deeply. He might not like the answer. Yet he lingered, watching the tapestry. He saw Castle Roogna, with its returning personnel cleaning out the last of the debris of battle and doing preparatory work for the zombie graveyard beyond the moat. The graveyard those zombies still resided in today. They had protected the castle well all these centuries, but now it was in no danger, so they lay quietly out of sight. Except for Jonathan, the strange exception. It seemed there were personality differences among zombies, just as there were in people.
One in every crowd, he murmured.
His eye focused on the spot he had vacated. He and Jumper had been trying to get as close to the place they had entered the 4th wave world as possible. They had cut into the jungle, and the jungle had tried to cut into them when they encountered that sawgrass. Navigated the gap with the use of silk lines for descent and ascent. Fortunately, the gap dragon had been elsewhere at the time, perhaps suffering from the forget spell, and forged into northern Xanth. As they drew near the spot, their presence seemed to activate the spell, and it had reverted. There, near that place, was a mundane giant. He had no huge spider now as a companion. He had wandered to a stockaded hut, begging a place to stay the night. He faced the mistress of the hut, an attractive young woman, as Dor watched the tiny figures animated.
"What are they saying?"
Dor asked Grundy.
"I thought you needed no translation." "Grundy,"
the golem hastily translated.
"I am a barbarian, recently disenchanted. I was transformed or driven into the body of a flea, while an alien shade governed my body." "The flea!" Dor exclaimed. "The one that hid in my hair and kept biting me. That was the mundane." "Shut up while I'm translating," Grundy said. "This lip reading is hard."
He resumed.
"That creature did its best to destroy me, yanking me across the gap on a rope, throwing me among zombies, thrusting me single-handedly against an army of monsters." "Now that's a distortion," Dor cried indignantly. "And that awful giant spider," the translation continued. "I lived in daily fear it would discover my flea body, and—"
The barbarian shuddered.
"Now at last I have fought free, but I am tired and hungry. May I stay the night?"
The woman looked him over.
"For a story like that, you can stay 3 nights. Know any more?" "Many more," the barbarian said humbly. "Nobody who can lie like that can be all bad."
"Right," he agreed abjectly. She smiled.
"I am a widow. My husband was roasted by a dragon. I need a man to run the farm. A strong, patient man, not too bright, willing to settle for—"
She spread her hands and half turned, inhaling. The barbarian noted her inhalation. It was a good one, the kind barbarians normally paid attention to. He smiled.
"Well, I'm not patient." "That's close enough," the woman said.
Dor turned away, satisfied. His erstwhile mundane body would be as happy as he deserved to be. Something about this scenelet reminded Dor of Cedric the Centaur. Why was he making out with Celeste, the naughty filly? But Dor restrained himself from peeking. It really was not his business anymore. Something caught his eye. He focused on the corner of the tapestry. There was Tiny Jumper, waving. There was another little spider beside him.
"You found a friend!" Dor exclaimed. "That's no friend. That's his mate," Grundy said. "She wants to know where he was those 5 years he was gone. So when the popping out the elixir vial alerted him to your presence, he brought her out here to meet you." "Tell her it's true, all true," Dor said. Then, 5 years? 2 weeks, your time. It only seemed like 2 weeks to him, too, but Packet's home."
"Ah, I understand." Dor exchanged amenities with the skeptical Mrs. Jumper, bade his friend farewell again, promised to return next day month or so, and strode from the room feeling better.
"You move with a new assurance," Grundy remarked. He seemed sad. "You won't be needing me much longer." "Penalty of growing up," Dor said. "1 year I'll get married, and you can bodyguard my son, exactly as you have me." "Gee," the golem said, flattered.
They departed the castle, going to Dor's cheese cottage. He felt increasingly increasing apprehension and nostalgia as he approached his home. His parents should still be away on their mundane mission. Only Millie would be there. Millie the maid. Millie the ghost. Millie the nurse. What had the brain coral animating his body said to her? What should he say to her now? Did she have any notion what he had been doing the past 2 weeks? Dor steeled himself and went inside. He didn't knock. It was his own cottage, after all. He was just the lad Millie took care of. She did not know, must never know, that he had been the magician who looked like a mundane warrior way back when. "Say," Grundy inquired as they passed through the unfamiliar house toward the kitchen, "what name did you use in the tapestry?" "My own name, of course. My name and talent." Oh, no. The most certain identifiers of any person in the land of Xanth were name and talent. He had thoughtlessly given himself away. "Is that you, Dor?" Millie called musically from the kitchen. Too late to escape. Yes." No help for it but to see if she recognized him. Oh, those 12-year-old boy mistakes. Just talking to a wall." He snapped his fingers at the nearest wall. "Say something, wall." "Something," the wall said obligingly. She came to the kitchen doorway, and she was stunningly beautiful. 12 years older than she had been so recently, but almost regal in her abrupt maturity. Now she had poise, elegance, stature. She had aged, as it were overnight, more than a decade, while Dor had lost a similar amount. A gulf had opened between them, a gulf of age and time, huge as the gap. He loved her yet. "Why, you haven't talked to the walls in 2 weeks," Millie said. Dor knew this had to be true. The coral had animated his body, but had lacked his special magical talent. "Is something wrong?" Millie asked. "Why are you staring at me?" Dor forced his fixed eyes down. What could he say? "I seem to remember you from somewhere." She laughed with the echo of the sweetness and innocence he had known and loved in the tapestry maid. "From this morning, Dor, when I served you breakfast." But now he would not be put off. The thing he most feared was recognition. He had to face it now. "Millie, when you were young, before you were a ghost, did you have friends?" She laughed again, and this time he noticed the fullness and rondure of her body as it laughed with her. "Of course I had friends." "Who were they? You never told me." His heart was beating hard. She frowned. "You're serious, aren't you? But I can't tell you. There was a forget spell detonated in the vicinity, and as a ghost I was near it a long time. I don't remember my friends." The forget spell. It had made her forget him. Yet he tried, perversely, driven by an urge he refused to define. "How did you die?" "Someone enchanted me, turned me into a book." A book? The book he had found in the dumbwaiter leading from the female room. Vadney must have transformed her into it, then hoisted that tome to the upper floor, and no one had caught on. A stupid mistake, courtesy of Murphy's curse. He himself had placed it on the shelf in the library, where it had remained 800 years unmolested. "I couldn't even remember what my body was, or where," Millie continued. "Or maybe a spell was on that, too.
So much was vague, especially at first. And then I was a ghost, and it was easier not to think about it. Ghosts don't have very solid minds.
She paused, studying Dor.
But sometimes there are flashes. Your father reminded me of someone. Someone I think I loved, but I can't quite remember. Anyway, he's 800 years dead now. And there's Jonathan. I've known Jonathan for centuries, and he's awful nice. When I was alone and lonely and confused, especially after King Roogna died and the castle fell into oblivion, he had a long and good reign, but it had to end sometime. Jonathan came and helped me to hold on. He didn't seem to mind that I was only a ghost. If only.
So, she had loved Dor, and forgotten the ambiance of the forget spell. His name and talent, no giveaway after all. Nothing in his birth and youth in this world had alerted her, since she had never known the origin of that bygone hero, and she could hardly be expected to make the connection. Only Jonathan had been her comfort across the centuries. She had not forgotten Jonathan, because he had always been there, a ghost and a restless zombie, bolstering each other when the rest of the world had forgotten them. Why torture her by restoring her memory of prior heartache? Dor knew what he had to do. Millie, I have obtained the elixir to restore Jonathan to life. He held up the vial. She stared at him, unbelieving.
Dor, now I remember something. Your father. He reminded me of you. Not in appearance, but in...
I wasn't born yet, Dor said harshly, repenting his recent urge to have her remember exactly this. You've got it backward. I remind you of my father because I am growing up.
Yes, yes, of course, she agreed uncertainly. Only somehow, your talent of... I remember talking to pearls in a big nest or something.
Take the elixir, he said, presenting it to her. Call Jonathan. Oh, Jonathan, he thought in momentary agony. Do you know you fill the shoes of her lover and of her betrothed? Be good to her, for the sake of what was never allowed to be. Millie was too distracted to take the vial.
Still, there is something. A big barbarian named...
Jonathan! Dor bellowed as well as his present body permitted. Come here! The door opened, for Jonathan was always near Millie. The loyalty of centuries. He shuffled into the kitchen, dripping the usual clods of dirt and mold. No matter how much fell, a zombie always had more. It was part of the enchantment. His body was skeletal, his eyes rotten sockets. The nauseating odor of putrefaction was about him.
Yet I know now that was only a passing fascination, Millie continued. The barbarian left me, while Jonathan stayed.
Dor tore open the corked vial. Take this, he cried, hurling the precious drops onto the zombie. Immediately the body began to heal. Flesh was magically restored. Tissues filled out. Skin formed and cleared. The figure unhunched, became fuller, taller.
And so my true love is Jonathan,
Millie concluded. Then she looked up, realizing what transformation was taking place, and her hair flung out as of old.
Jonathan!
She screamed. Rapidly, the last of the zombie attributes disappeared. The figure shaped into a gaunt but healthy living man. The Zombie Master! Dor exclaimed, recognizing him at last. I never knew your given name. Then he stepped back out of the way, letting true love assume its rightful place. Jonathan and Millie came together, she with a little skip kicking of feet, and Dor knew his quest was done. And thus, we have reached the end of Castle Roogna, Book 3 of the Xanth series. Who knew that that was who Jonathan was? Who saw it coming? But I've read these before, so I kind of knew. Yes, Tom. Quite a story. Quite a story. They're good stories. They really are. Well told, mixes stuff in throughout the way. Like we find Millie, I want to say, first off in book 1. And she comes about a little bit more in book 2, and then this one in book 3. Like anybody who had read through book 2 will have recognized that once we met Vadney and knew what her talent was, that she had to have been the one who transformed Millie into the book, because we knew that from book 2 that Millie had been transformed into a book. And once we heard what Vadney's talent was, you knew that it had to be her. Like pieces come together as you read through these, and you're like, ah. So hope you guys enjoyed. Again, I will have these chapters up on my YouTube channel a little bit later this evening. So you can catch any of the first 3 books of the Xanth series. They're on my YouTube channel. If you'd like to go and check them out. Next week, we will start into a new book. I think I am going to take a slight departure from what I have been doing. 3 books of Xanth down. I'm going to take a little break from Xanth. I have had a request from Tronus come in that there is a Battletech book that he would like me to read. And I have told him that if we can track it down, we will read it. And I think we had found a place where we could get it. The book is Trial Under Fire. And if I recall correctly, it is basically it is essentially the book of Mech Warrior 3. Let's call it. So he has asked that I read that. I have agreed to do so. So that is going to be my next read. I don't know how long that one's going to take me, because it's a little bit different. It looks like it might be, it's about 135 pages, which, looks like it might be significantly shorter than some of the other things that I have done. So it might go quite a bit faster, but we'll plan to take a read through that on the next couple of Tuesdays. And then we'll make our way through to... Yeah, it really does look like it's a little bit shorter. So, yeah, it is the one, based on Mech Warrior 3. So, so I will do that one, and then I am open to suggestions on what I should do after I have that one done. if nobody comes forward with something. I'm not doing any of the hugely popular recent ones. Um, we're not doing Harry Potter. We're not doing, Lord of the Rings. We're not doing, um, whatever the heck JR, or what is it, JR Martin, whatever the crap that is, which I can't, um, why the name is completely escaping me right now. Um, um, we're not doing any of those hugely popular ones. I'm trying to stick to stuff, that's good, but more on the fringes of stuff that not necessarily everybody has kind of read through and things like that. So, I may do some more Piers Anthony stuff. Maybe we'll do some of the incarnations of immortality. Um, maybe I'll look at doing Bio of a Space Tyrant. That one is going to be long if we do it. We may look at doing the Apprentice Adept. I may explore some of those. I may take a look at it. Throw any suggestions that you may have, if you would. There is my Discord channel. I have a book recommendations channel in there. Throw any recommendations that you may have in there so that way I can take a look at them. Wild ADHD. I will forget it 30 seconds after the stream ends because I will move on to getting this uploaded onto YouTube and will wildly forget anything that was mentioned to me on stream. So if you would put it into there, that's the easiest way I have of making sure that I actually get in there and look it up. So other than that, guys, as always, thank you so much for being here with me. I hope you enjoyed the reading this evening. My plan is to be here tomorrow for Pathfinder. It is my game tomorrow night, Bloodlords. So the plan is for me to be here for Bloodlords tomorrow. It is going to depend a little bit on how I am feeling. I've been having good days and bad days with some of my my health issues at the moment. So if I'm feeling good, I'll be here for Pathfinder. If I'm not, I may not be. I expect to be back, when or Thursday, one way or the other, for some Stompy Mech Night. It's a little bit easier to do those ones than it is to run a Pathfinder game. So we'll see how it's going. But that's my plan for the next couple of days. Hope to see you guys all there. As always, the greatest gift that you can give to a streamer is the gift of your time. And I appreciate that you guys all gave me the gift of yours this evening. Hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day. Fantastic rest of your week if I don't see you the rest of this week. And we'll see you guys again soon. Have a great night, everybody.